Have you been wondering why all cameras seem to be mirrorless nowadays? The DSLR used to be the apex predator of the camera world. Why has it changed to these slightly smaller cameras? And if you want more camera or tech content, consider hitting follow. Now, you've probably noticed that over the last 10 years, the pro choice of camera bodies has moved from being big, chunky DSLRs to these much smaller mirrorless cameras that are no wider than maybe a couple smartphones. But this change hasn't come because of some sort of ergonomics or the general trends of electronics getting smaller over time. It actually has to do with light physics, not necessarily of the body, but what it enables us to do with the lenses. You see, when we can get this chunky mirror out of the way that used to be required to actually see what you're shooting through the viewfinder, it enables us to have a much smaller flange distance, which is the distance between the back of the lens and the sensor. And now this might seem weird, but having a smaller flange distance actually lets us change the way that the lens works. You see, in an old SLR lens, what you essentially have is the front half of the lens is in charge of creating a good image, focusing what you're looking at through to about this part of the lens. And the rear part is your retrofocal group. Essentially then does all the job of all the lens corrections from the nice image into something that doesn't have weird edge distortion around the edges of the lens. But when you have a smaller flange distance, those lens distortions actually aren't anywhere near as much of an issue. So you get to essentially cut off the whole back third or so of the lens. And simply because the light has to go through much fewer just groups of glass, it gets less distorted and less kind of fuzzy as it goes through, and you end up with much sharper images.